7 stood, and they had to bring it down and essentially screwed up the entire thing by really making people come online and understand that this was an inside job, and this was an occult ritual by bringing down that middle pillar when nothing had hit it. So that was the ultimate mistake in this whole ritual enactment, and as far as I'm concerned, they did not fulfill the agenda that they were trying to fulfill by this ritual being enacted. Instead, they initiated a great awakening within the human population. As the researcher Michael Tessarian is fond of saying, did 9/11 shake us up, or did it? So now, just as we did with the reverse of the Great Seal on the back of the $1 bill, I'm going to examine the gematria, the occultic numerology involved in the 9/11 event. These are the numbers of the 3 flights that struck these 3 buildings. The North Tower was struck by Flight 11, the South Tower was struck by Flight 175, and the Pentagon was allegedly struck by Flight 77. Now, there is another flight that was involved on that day that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania by an unknown act of will, shall we say. And this was Flight 93, and it is my contention that Flight 93 was indeed headed for World Trade Center number 7, Building 7 of the Trade Center, not to Washington, D.C., as is claimed. And this, to me, makes much more sense than it heading toward Washington, D.C., because I believe it was there to strike a building that had already been wired to allegedly collapse, as the 2 Twin Towers were, and that was Building 7. And the flight not making it to that building meant that they had to make a decision about whether to pull that building or to allow it to stand, and we know what they chose. So I'm going to place 93 over Building 7, and at first this would seem like a very arbitrary arrangement of numbers, and that these numbers don't have any commonalities to them, until we begin to perform gematria upon them. And then we see a very clear pattern emerge. So, I'm going to leave 11 as is for now, and I'm going to reduce or add these 2 numbers together and get a total. So 9 plus 3 is 12. 1 plus 7 plus 5 is 13, and 7 plus 7 is 14. So now, the 4 planes, we have a clear pattern. We have the pattern 11, 12, 13, and 14. And we can further reduce those down to 1 digit. We add 1 plus 1 and we get 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. So we have the pattern 2, 3, 4, 5. When we add those together, 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, we get the total 14. And again, there's that symbolic number again that totals 5, that is about the 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, and spirit. But it is the separation of them, the 1 and the 4, the spirit and then the 4 elements. This is the 14th level of that pyramid where the light is at, the 13 levels of stone, and then the light at the top, the 14th level. So look at the 9/11 date, 9/11/2001. You add up all of these numbers, 9 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 in 2001, and you get 14 again. So not only is it the date, it's the powers that did the act. Okay? The 4 planes total to 14. Their digits all totaled make 14. So the powers that performed this act are the 14, and this correlates with the 14th level of this pyramid, or the illuminated ones, the sorcerers behind the scenes that are manipulating the events of the world. So we have this arrangement on the building: 77 at the Pentagon, 11 at the North Tower, 175 at the South Tower, 93 at Building 7. If we add the 2 planes that struck these towers together, we get the number 186. 1 45 plus 11 is 186. Now, these are the planes that struck the Twin Towers, the North and South Tower. What if we equally distribute that number between the two buildings by dividing it into 2? 186 divided by 2 is 93. So there is 93, 93, 93 on every building. And we've already seen what 93 represents. It represents the will to ascend out of illusion, out of base consciousness, and into cosmic awareness or higher levels of consciousness. 93 is the number of willpower and of love. It is essentially the same force, the force that expands consciousness, love, or will to ascend, to put what we think and feel into action, to use our willpower. So we are left with only 2 numbers that symbolically represent the events of this day, 77 and 93. And these are 2 extremely significant occult numbers in numerology because they represent 2 completely different concepts. And we have to look at these 2 numbers as they relate to a third number, the number 777, which we've already seen is the number of God or completion or perfection. We saw that earlier. The 7 chakras, the 7 planets that can be seen with the naked eye, tripled for the 3 aspects of consciousness, unified as 1 to total 3. Again, it's the number of God, the number of completion, or the number of perfection. 93 in relation to this number 777. Just like 777 totals 21, which totals 3. 93 totals 12, which reduces to 3. So they equal the same thing, which means they equal the same. They mean the same thing. So love is 93. Will is the concept of 93. It is the number of ascension. So all of these ideas are the same. They mean the same thing. In gematria, when numerological additions total the same value, the words that they represent really mean the same thing. So 93 is 777, is love, is will, is ascension, is God, is completion, is perfection. These are all the same concept. The number 77 is very significant. It is the 14. It is the dark aspect of that light in the triangle, the ego, the all-seeing eye that is identified with building that pyramid upward, the physical form, the physical world, ruling, control, sorcery. It is the force of chaos. The number 77 represents chaos in all forms of occultism. It represents the sorcerer. It is the sorcerer's number. And it is the number of the beast in disguise. Why is that? Because if you fail, even if you succeed in one of the other 2 aspects of consciousness, in thought and emotion but not action, or in thought and action but no emotion, in the example of a sorcerer has no emotion, or even in emotion and action, but with no thought. That is base consciousness. That is the beast. You have not arrived at the 777. You have only arrived at the 77, which is 2/3 of completion. Or it is 14 out of 21, 2/3. Right? And this reduces in decimal to 0.666, repeating. So it is the number of the beast in disguise. The sorcerer is the beast. And this is encoded on the 3rd degree tracing board of Freemasonry. Here you see the tools that slayed Hiram Abiff. He is finally struck with the mallet, representing ignorance, the light going out, the third eye being struck, put into the coffin, okay? The coffin is the spirit.